It's definitely luck and knowing who I'm speaking to, but I think a lot of that has come from spending the time and the hard work in making sure that I'm talking to everybody and I've got those connections in the right place at the right time.
Welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast. Before we get started on this episode, I would like to invite you to our community so that you can hear more stories to inspire change within your life and positive change within the systems in which we live. All I want you to do is to click on the subscribe button. Your comments mean the world to us with anything that's resonated with you, and I absolutely love your support. I can't wait to go on this journey alongside you. Thank you so much for subscribing. Let's get into today's episode. I would like to say a huge thank you to today's sponsors, the Better Business Network. Now, we have been part of the Better Business Network since its founding in 2020, and we absolutely love being a member and what that provides. The network is an inclusive nationwide community for purpose-driven businesses, for those who care about their social and environmental impact and want to do something to support the world in which we live. They help you grow your impact, income, and audience while advocating for systemic change. They give you access to events, tools, resources, and training to upskill your organization to ensure that you don't leave any gaps towards the world that you want to live. They provide events, tools, resources, and training to upskill your organization towards supporting you on your journey towards being a better business. To find out more about the network, head over to thebetterbusiness.network online. Today we're going to a deep dive with Adam Bastock.
I'm Adam Bastock, and this is my Tale to Inspire.
Adam Bastock, welcome to the Tales to Inspire podcast, mate. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a delight to be here.
So, who knows where this is going to go? It's going to be fun, whatever happens. So, do you want to introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and we'll just go from there?
Yeah, so my name's Adam Bastock. I grew up in Rugby in the Midlands, and then moved down to Brighton probably about in 2011. Lived there for 8 years, then moved to Glasgow, which is where I currently live. So that's sort of where I've been. My background is digital marketing, and we can kind of go into that in more detail, but now I'm working in sustainability, and I've shifted out of marketing into the sustainability space to try and get small businesses to net zero, essentially, and become more sustainable financially and environmentally through that, because I found that small businesses were just being ignored by a lot of the guidance and advice out there previously.
So let's go to the very beginning. Family background, where you were raised in rugby, and how that was about. So like tell me about what it was like to be a child in your shoes.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, rugby is a bit of a weird place in that there's nothing really there. It's a place that's got a very good connection to London, so you can get to London in 50 minutes, but you know, and that's where the game rugby obviously came from, at the private school there, which I didn't go to, but it was a really good, sort of safe, normal upbringing. There wasn't any dramas or anything like that. Went to the comprehensive school there until I was 16, then did A-levels at one of the grammar schools there, and then sort of left to move to Brighton after that fairly quickly. So,
what dreams did you have? Like, what kind of things did you want to be when you were older? Do you have any siblings?
Yes, two sisters, and then so in terms of the dreams, it was there's a big age gap there. So they're 10 and 12 years older than me. So kind of saw them go off and do university or not do university and do kind of two different paths there. So I never really knew what I wanted to do, and I felt like when I was at school, going to the grammar school especially pressured me quite heavily down the university route. And the school at the time was like the biggest provider of students to Oxbridge in the country or something insane like that. So they were really pushing that route. I didn't feel comfortable going to university because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I deferred for a year and then ended up working at a supermarket and starting an open university degree, because I was like, look, I can just change if I suddenly decide that I don't want to. I can do module by module and divert it. So as soon as I was kind of 18, I was doing open university, which I think built up that ability to do stuff outside of work. So I was doing that in the evenings while working part-time at a supermarket. I think it was at Sainsbury's at the time. So yeah, in terms of dreams and aspirations, I don't really know at the time. There wasn't much there. I think partly I'd been exposed to small businesses through kind of my dad, who was doing a lot of salesman work and doing a lot of travelling, just in the area in kind of Birmingham in the Midlands, but selling kind of card machines to small businesses as part of his work. So there was an exposure to the small kind of high street shops that he was engaging there, which I think planted the seeds of then going, actually, how do we do something with this? Right. And when I was probably when I was 17 or 18, I did start like an online Etsy store.
Okay.
So I started selling stuff online, which was like little homemade cufflinks and bits of laser cut jewellery and all that jazz.
Okay.
And that took off relatively successfully. So I made a couple of grand, from that in the first year or two, which then meant I started going to like local markets and stalls and just meeting people in the business community. This is more in Brighton once I moved because it's got quite a good scene there for those kind of craft fairs and stuff. So I think that as well also helped to just build that small business exposure, I guess, which is what I'm leaning on now.
So where does your journey go from Open University, Sainsbury's, that side of things?
Yeah, so I was in Brighton doing the Open University degree.
What made you go to Brighton?
So my boyfriend is there, so he went to University of Sussex. So that was then like, I'm leaving Brighton, I might as well, leaving Rugby, I might as well go somewhere else. And Brighton seemed like a fun, sort of interesting place to go.
Okay.
And it was great. So yeah, I lived there for 8 years, really enjoyed it, but we'll probably get into why I left later. But I think that kind of the small business piece, the Etsy thing and building up stuff meant that I started just tinkering with projects. And while I was at Sainsbury's, I was doing the degree, I was then selling things locally, selling things online, built a couple of my own websites, was testing out just different ideas with that, and I guess that's where the entrepreneurial spark was started, which I always sort of hate as a phrase, but yeah. And that's where it came from, I think, is how do I make money that is on my own terms? And it was, arguably still fairly unsuccessful in that. Kind of financially, I don't have like a big mansion and a house in the south of France, sadly, but we'll get there one day. But it was that thing of like, what can I do that puts me back in control of this? Because Sainsbury's was fine. It was very non-eventful. And then from that, ended up quitting like 2014, I want to say, and working for a small business, which looking back is absolutely mad that they chose to hire me, because I basically came in having dabbled with a few websites and done some like Shopify websites that I'd built and was exposed to it, but didn't really have any experience or qualifications. And they basically gave me their entire business website to rebuild. Really? and they were selling a lot of stuff. They were doing quite a lot of money through the website every month. They had quite a lot of fan base. And I was just rebuilding the website, having quit Sainsbury's and just gone, yeah, sure, I'll give it a go. And it worked out really well. They're still using the site today, I think. So it was fine, but yeah, I'm not sure I'd have hired me at the time, if that makes sense.
But that shows like you're an attitude to be willing to learn, and to say yes. I guess if you were one of those people who actually, I'm going to say no until I know everything about it and go and do it, you're not really going to be able to do something like that.
No, exactly. And I think that's what they were as business owners, small business owners. They were also in that thing of like, we don't know what we're doing. Let's work this through together, and as long as we can, just be open with it, then great. And I think that attitude really did help solidify a lot of my skills, and was a really good first job outside of Sainsbury's.
So I assume that kind of having a job in such a role helped you learn a bunch of things and add to your own repertoire of what you can offer.
Yeah. So after that, because it was a small business and because I was doing so much of just, here's a website, rebuild it, you just learn as much as you can. And Brighton's a great place for that because it's got quite a big digital marketing and sort of e-commerce and web scene, tech scene, whatever you want to call it. It's called like Silicon Beach, as one of the names for it. A little bit cringe, but yeah. So there's a great network of freelancers there, so I started going to a lot of events, just talking to other business owners who were in that space, and just absorbed a lot of knowledge, and still do to a certain extent. So after that job, I then started working for a company based in Crawley who sold industrial shelving, and doing a similar thing, just looking after their 5 or 6 websites and their kind of stuff there. That then taught me more of the skills around Google advertising and SEO. And then I worked for another company after that, after about 2 years, back down in Brighton again, which is an art gallery, which is really interesting sort of exposure to a completely different world, much bigger website, much more technical skills, still a small business. So I never worked for a company that had more than about 20 employees, apart from Sainsbury's, obviously. And then, so I got like a lot of exposure to that, and then went freelance afterwards to go, well, I've sort of got all the little bits that I need now. What I realised I was good at was talking to people and simplifying things and going, well, actually, you don't need to know everything about SEO. You need to know what you don't know. Yeah. And as soon as you hit those limits, you hire someone else who does know that very specific knowledge. But typically for small businesses, they're skipping out that huge phase where they're just going, and SEO, sorry, just to confirm, is search engine optimization. So how do you get higher on Google? Which sounds really technical. It's actually relatively simple, which is just tell people what you sell. Do you sell red velvet cushions? If so, does your website say that you sell red velvet cushions? Or do you actually sell, water bottles or something? Yeah. And that was the point where a lot of businesses were at, where their websites just didn't say what they were doing. But they were potentially hiring in incredibly technical expertise to fix problems that didn't exist. Right. And there was a big disconnect there, which really annoyed me. So I went freelance to try and fix that gap and go, well, look, here's some practical, simple advice around SEO that will work and does work and did work. So.
And how did you get yourselves as a freelancer into these companies to be able to work? Did you go through a third party?
It was a mixture really, but mostly just networking.
Right.
So there's a co-working space, and again, this is where Brighton is really good, because they've got several really active co-working spaces with a few hundred members. Right. So just started becoming part of the community there and getting known for it, and then it's just random conversations. And like one of the biggest clients I picked up, I was having a conversation like this with someone just over a coffee, and there was someone sat 2 tables away who overheard I was talking about SEO and came over to me afterwards like, Adam, can I just grab you for a minute? I want to ask you a question about SEO stuff. And then that led to 10, 15, 30 grams worth of work, however much it was. Wow. So over the course of several years, and then, skip ahead 4 or 5 years when COVID's happening, I'd moved to Glasgow. Those conversations I planted back in Brighton at the co-working spaces then came through then. So I think it's that ability to bring people together and just be a people person, I think, is probably the skill in that sense that I've got. Everything else you can sort of learn, but I'd say that's what I am most comfortable with.
So your journey so far, and it's going to go even further, it feels like you've had to re-identify yourself with, like, the Sainsbury's use, and he's long gone.
Yeah.
And then the you going, creating the SEO and doing and learning, like, it feels like you're going into a new you every time you do it, which is amazing, because you've got this opportunity to realise that change is good.
Yeah.
And that change is an opportunity for you to learn and then to help others as well at the same time.
But I think it's interesting though, because I think I sort of thought I'd killed off digital marketing SEO, Adam. But sadly there's kind of claws that are bringing me back into that. And I think this is where that sustainability piece, whereas a conference recently called Can Marketing Save the Planet, which was a fantastic event. But I found myself a lot of that knowledge from back then of going, well, actually, this is just the problem with sustainability and the market that I'm in now, is that people aren't telling people the basics. Right. They're not saying, here's why our product is good and here's why it's sustainable, in the same way that people weren't saying on the website, these are the cushions that we sell. So suddenly there is that overlap again of those skill sets. So there's definitely knowledge that I've picked up that I would never have had, and I think there's been several key points I can think of with learning sustainability where I've gone, this is way more complicated, this is above my pay scale. And then I've spoken to a few people and looked into it and been like, oh, is that it? Is it that easy? Within reason. And it is, it's just, because it's such a fast moving and new market to a certain extent, a lot of the things that you might seem complicated are actually there. In the same way that SEO was, where I'd often say I couldn't do things, then looked into it and went, oh shit, it's actually quite easy.
So then how do we go from doing the SEO stuff, doing the marketing, to the sustainability world that you live in today?
Yeah, so there's a point where I'd always wanted to kind of do something bigger. So I was freelancing, which was great. I was like, it's not really my own company. I don't feel like I own anything. Mm-hmm. It's just me subcontracting for people, which is great and fine. But it got to a point where I was like, what do I do next? Yeah. And it's like, either start an SEO agency, hire people, build things out. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. There's plenty of people doing that. It's not a very exciting world. No offense to any SEO agency owners out there, but it wasn't like going to get me excited. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the conferences are just very dry and just very sort of boring people to a certain extent, where it's not got that impact. It's not got the bigger sort of ethical world behind it. So I was like, okay, what is there? And it was during COVID, actually. I remember we went on holiday during the first lockdown, sort of when it was kind of in August time, I think, when it was Eat Out to Help Out. And we went up to a little hotel in Skye, not Skye, in the west coast of Scotland. Okay. And I remember it being amazing, because we arrived and it was like really heavy rain, absolutely torrential, awful rain. And then we woke up the next morning, because you couldn't see anything from our room, because it was just so wet. And then woke up, and it was just not a cloud in the sky, perfectly flat sea, and it was just this beautiful bay that extended out, and there were like cows grazing, and there was owls, and it felt suddenly weirdly magical of like, where have we come to? During that weekend, I remember writing down like small businesses, community, like practical advice. And I was like, okay, that is what I want to do. That's what I've kind of been good at. And it took me probably about 2 years of that just working away at the back of my head of, I always wanted to have a community of people that I could chat to and have a network that I could do something with, but then wanted something bigger that was a bit more structural, rather than it just being me at one of the co-working spaces. It was a bit more of a community of businesses that I can help. So it was really trying to just work out then what that was. And I think I'd always had an interest in sustainability. I'd always been listening to podcasts and videos, and I started a website selling electric mopeds, not the little kick scooters, but the actual mopeds. And then that went off down a project when I was doing freelancing. So there was always this idea of sustainability there, or low carbon stuff there. And then it just sort of all coalesced into where we are now with Small 99, which was helping small businesses be more sustainable through community-led events that bring people together. And it was that moment in that hotel where it suddenly became clear of what that was going to look like.
That's because you had, I guess it's kind of where I'm at with Tales Inspire a little bit right now, but you had clarity. Yeah. You had that, man, I can see what it is that I actually want to do. Others could probably have told you, this is kind of what, but until that penny drop moment happened for you, or you saw it, kind of nothing. So sustainability and bringing people together. How does Small 99 do that?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways that we've been working on. The most successful thing we've done is People Planet Pint, which really caught me off guard. So later that year, because I think it would have been the same.
No, it's relatively recent as well, right? If we look at like in terms of a timescale, when are we talking about? Like, what year are we in?
Yes, this is what I try to work out. Is so the hotel holiday was 2020 August. The next year, 2021 in November, there was COP26 that happened in Glasgow, which is then where I was living at the time, having moved up from Brighton at the start of the pandemic, actually. And that was the first one that I'd been to, where I'd been to about 10 talks during the 2 days, all really good content, really interesting, quite a unique place and position to get that. But I was like, I'm not talking to these people. I'm always looking at the people on the stage and the panel, and you go, at most there's 4 people that you're hearing from the experience of in a room full of 200. How do we get the people who've got this experience in the room, who are normally fairly senior in some cases, or they're experienced with their own niche sort of world? How do we bring them together to get them to just have a conversation? Nothing more than that. It's not going to be a pitch, there's not going to be sailing, there's nothing like that. Just talk to each other. That's all I want, and I want that community. So put on an event and put it on like one of the intranets, or like the event aggregators, whatever it was, for COP26, and we've got about 40 people just turned up to the pub, who then came along and started chatting to each other, which is a mad new invention. It's not high tech, it's low tech, it's pubs. It's get people in a pub, get them a pint, get them to talk to each other. That is sort of the fundamental sales pitch for People Planet Pint. After that, then Omicron happened, so it was about a 6-month delay before we started back up again. And then it was about March 2022, so about just past 2 years, sort of anniversary of it, when it started. And then since then it's just grown sort of quite aggressively. And we don't make any money from it. It is sort of a loss leader for us, but it's just great to see that as a network of people who are bringing, all of our local hosts are amazing at bringing these people together and hosting these events at scale. So we've reached, I think, about 10, 15,000 people now throughout that network, throughout the world. We're in about kind of 5 or 6 different countries now, and it's just really grown at doing that, just bringing people together to have a conversation.
So just to clarify, the way it works is, I live in Scarborough. Yeah. Okay, and I'm in Scarborough, and I want to connect with a community of people to talk about sustainability. So the theme always has to be around sustainability or some kind of people, planet. Yeah. Really. Or you could talk about the pint, I guess, if you want to.
Yeah.
But essentially,
low carbon beers.
Yeah, low carbon pints, essentially. So I say, you know what, Adam, really want to do this. I have no idea if there's anyone in our community, but there's a pub or a location here. It doesn't have to be a pub, I guess it can be an event space or something. and I want to organise a group of people to come together once a month to talk about whatever it is.
Yeah.
What's the steps next?
So we do actually recommend pubs because it's a more accessible format than an event space because you can walk in, walk out much more easily. Right. So we basically, all we need from you is book a table in a pub, tell us when you've booked it for. We will then list the event and promote it to our community and give you some suggested resources of where to send it out to and some sort of materials for the night as well, so posters and things to advertise it locally. But essentially that's it. All we need from the local hosts is that, the location and the time. The way we design the system is that we do all the boring stuff and the heavy lifting. So all of the Eventbrite listing, all of the technology, all of the materials and all the printing and all that stuff is all done by us, so that it's very easy for the local host to host it. In reality, the host does do a lot of work in terms of getting people there and emailing out to their networks and local community groups that they know of that, I don't know what Scarborough's got in terms of the local climate networks or whatever it is. So that tends to be where the host comes in, really, is that localised knowledge. And then because it's on Eventbrite, people will find it, so we just randomly who are looking. So we get around 40 to 50% of our attendees are people who just find it when they're looking for things to do in the area. Yeah. It's really interesting that it's actually such a high percentage of people who are looking for something like this, and there's nothing else really out there. I think that's why it's worked. So it's a very simple concept, and it's been designed to be that way.
But you said it's a loss leader, so essentially, and it's free, you don't make any money of it, so you must pay for the pints or the food or whatever happens out of the drinks. Yeah. The Eventbrite, the promotion, all that. How are you able to fund that?
Yeah, so with the drinks, our sponsor Crystal, who are a web hosting company, they sponsor the first 33 drinks at every event, which is a really kind of generous offer from them to be able to just, again, be a bit more of an incentive to get people in the room. Everything else gets funded, and it's not particularly high cost, but there's the technology and there's a lot of behind the scenes admin and kind of piping that goes on, and we fund that through our other work, which is engaging small businesses in workshops and consultancy. So there's three sort of pillars to Small 99, is the events, there's the workshops, and then there's the technology that we've got. So in terms of technology, which again is also free, we've got a carbon footprint measurement tool which is free to use, and we've got a carbon reduction planning tool, so that as a small business owner you get an idea of what your footprint is. It's not going to be technical, but it gets you started, and then a list of ideas that are bespoke to your industry off the back of that you can go forward with. What's bringing the money for both that and the People Planet Pint events, really, and the idea behind those both being free, is to get businesses to take that first step. And that's really where Small 99 sits in the market, is that conversion point from where do I start to having started is through the workshops we run. And those workshops are designed around that. And that might be a 2-hour workshop on getting an action plan together. It might be a full day session that is then a really intense sort of business strategy session on what net zero is and how to make your business better as a result of it.
So if we go from, we've talked about the 2 free events, the one that's actually the one that you're making money from and supporting people with in a financial way, is how does that work? I want a 2-day workshop with my whole company, or my leaders within my company, and we need to change the way that we're currently operating it's not sustainable in any way. Yeah. What do you bring in a team of people? Do you work by yourself? Obviously with your experience is more on the marketing and that side of it from your history, but I assume you're really knowledgeable in terms of the environmental side of things as well. So how does that all work?
It is that Venn diagram, right, of the marketing and the sustainability. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, we don't do that much work internally with companies. That's still a package we're starting to design out. Okay. Typically where we work is with public sector organisations. So a local council or a organisation that gets funding through a public body of some sort. And that might be something like Shared Prosperity, UK Shared Prosperity funding, where they've bid for a fund to then deliver some work and they don't know what that looks like. They then come to us to say, we've got this money, what can you do for it? We will then put together a package, which is typically off the shelf. So we've really refined our offering over the past 2 years to be that two options. So we've got a 2-hour workshop called Carbon Reduction Action Box, where we would bring 10 businesses together to sit in a room and go, right, what have you done around your sort of sustainability strategy or policy? Here's a list of cards, and it's a very kind of physical workbook to get that idea. And it's not really about the cards that we give them, it's about the conversation that happens in that space, and the facilitation is in extracting that knowledge, and then people typically leave that to our workshop with confidence that they've done more than they thought, and that other businesses have done more than they thought possible because of that shared experience. That's quite new, we're still running that out, but we've done about 200 businesses through that this year. And then the one-day workshops are a much bigger piece, and that's typically where we've done a lot of our training over the past couple of years. It was on Zoom back kind of during COVID, and then coming out of that we're going more towards all day. And again, a local council would pay for that, either through us directly or through our sort of, us as a subcontractor to deliver that. Historically, it has all been me, and it's been really intense over the past 2 years because I've been travelling all over the place, doing all this, absorbing loads of knowledge, but speaking to small business owners about sustainability and giving them the practical advice. Because as soon as you go into carbon footprinting, you suddenly end up in that world like you did with SEO, where it's incredibly technical and not really practical. Mm-hmm. And so my role there is to navigate them through that, to go, well, what is realistic and reasonable for you to be able to include on this? Mm-hmm. Should you be worrying about the percentage of your energy mix from 2 years ago on your electricity? Probably not. Let's look at ways you can save money by reducing that instead, for example. So that's where it's all sort of coming from. The challenge now from a business point of view is going forward, how do we scale this? How do we get this so that it's not just Adam going around the country delivering these workshops, that we actually have a team of people, which is where we see the People Planet Pint piece coming in to go, well, actually, we've now got great reach and great network, and we've got an amazing team there of volunteers who are running these events in their local communities, who have local knowledge, which hopefully we can then, and this is all theoretical at the minute, but we can take our skill sets and start empowering those people to transform their local communities into low carbon ones. What that looks like, don't know. But that is sort of the mission, or the movement that Small 99 is now on, is how do we decarbonise local communities from the ground up at scale, cost effectively.
And that's incredible, because your journey as an entrepreneur has really talked about underlying everything is mindset, is that you have to be so creative. You're finding a gap in every area, right? There's a gap here within the local councils. You see there's a problem. Where's that gap? Where's that gap? And you've kind of produced these 3 different corners of the triangle, which are just, in one area, is just genius. You've got 2 that actually, if they don't make money, it's absolutely fine, because your aim isn't about profit, it's about impact. And the fact that you've got one that's making money that's supporting the other 2 may make money in the future, which is great, but they may also support that one that already makes money to be even better, to be able to create the impact that you're trying to create.
I think, going back to the marketing piece, I think it's what I've realised recently in reflecting on where we're at, where we've kind of done a strategy day or whatever, and thrown everything out and gone, right, what are we doing here? And that's been more helpful now. I've got like 2 employees to help with that and keep me on track a lot more than when it's just me throwing stuff at the wall. But it is that case of, with the kind of the online tools, they're almost an objection handle. So that's kind of marketing language to go, well, you have a call to action, but if not, do this. So that you still have them in some way. Yeah. So rather than paying for a workshop, you go, well, you can either have a great experience that is like £100 for a workshop or whatever it is, or if you want to get on your own for free, here's all the tools, you can go and do it yourself. Right. So that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind, and it would make it's a lot more money and a lot easier if we started focusing probably on internal training for corporates, for example. The challenge there is it's not got that local transformation aspect, and people aren't necessarily there because they want to be, and there is not that systems change perspective to it, which I think we will end up going down that route in some way and building out that product, because that is where the money is and will be in the next kind of few years, I think, just because they're going to be under more pressure, both from a climate impact point of view as well as a legislation and
but even if those people haven't chosen to be there, they've chosen to be in the workplace, but they've not chosen to be in the workshop. Yeah. For that I think it's been the company that's decided that this is best for their employees. There's still an opportunity, if it's inspiring enough, that you could get their buy-in. Yeah. For them to then maybe influence where they work, which essentially, but it's a long, I guess all of this is kind of, well, actually it shouldn't be. You've got till not a long time to fix all this stuff.
Something to fix 10 years ago.
Yeah, we need to somehow go back in time to go back in the future. Yeah. But there is a piece there that you could possibly do.
And I think that's why I've not gone down it yet, is because I don't know what that would look like. And I know small business owners because I've worked with them for the past 10, 15 years. That internal transformation piece of how do you get people who don't necessarily care about something to then take that as part of their identity and start driving that internally within the organisation is a much bigger question, I think. And there are other organisations out there doing that a lot better than I am at the minute. So it's sort of a piece of let them get on with it. We'll worry about this for now, and then we'll probably move into that. I wouldn't even call it a market necessarily, but we'll then support people on that. Because some of the challenges we've seen is people who have come to those workshops who are, the sustainability role or sustainability interested at least, coming into these workshops, then want like internal transformation because they're like, how do I communicate this to the rest of my team to get that internal buy-in? And I don't really know what the answer to that is.
It's so refreshing hearing you talk about the way that you run the company and things, because the last I'd say 4 months for Tales to Inspire, I've really struggled defining who we are.
Yeah.
We share real life stories to inspire individual change and systemic change. How do we do that? We do all these workshops, but there's so many different areas that have come up that I've kind of lost the message of who is it that we really are. And last weekend, I just had post-it notes over my office, everywhere, trying to like get things out of my head, because it's really hard when you're the one in it and trying to do all of that. I know there's something really special because it's been 5 years, and I know that there's loads that we can do. What that looks like, I don't know, but trying to understand that that's okay is okay as well, because it will get there somehow. The journey of being an entrepreneur and trying to be a social entrepreneur is not an easy one.
No, because I think it is, you are shoveling stuff at the wall to a certain extent and just seeing what sticks. At least I have been for the past few years, and I think that's slowing down now in a good way to go, well actually let's just focus on this one customer profile and then let's build something around them.
Well, when I started, people said niche, and which essentially means go narrow. But I've started to realise that at first I was like, I can't niche, I don't know what we're doing. I just want to share the stories of everyone because everyone inspires me. So essentially, I did it wide, and then now it's so wide that it's undefinable. Or it's becoming undefinable. Now it has to have narrow lanes within that scope, which is hard work trying to figure it that way when you're already in it.
But I think that's where the T model comes in, right? Where it is that you need a broad range of awareness, but within a deep knowledge of one thing within that. And I think that's quite a helpful model. When I was doing the SEO stuff, essentially, was always where I sat, is that SEO piece was, I had I had a broad knowledge of all parts of SEO, and then I did a bit of e-commerce was sort of my deeper knowledge piece. But because I had that broad T at the top of the T, it meant that I could talk to a lot of businesses in a way that was approachable. Whereas a lot of the people I was speaking to then, and I think the same as with the sustainability to a certain extent, a lot of the people who have got deep knowledge and passion, they don't have the T, they don't have that breadth. They are very narrow in terms of their knowledge, which is not a bad position to be in necessarily, but for what we're trying to do, I think there's a balancing act there that we need to try and achieve of going, how do we be wide enough so that we can bring people into this broader conversation that isn't like Extinction Rebellion, or they don't feel like we're an activist organisation, but they are actually having real impact in their local communities and they are starting to act like an activist without them realising it, which is a real challenge. I'm not saying that we've fixed it or finessed it or like we're suddenly going to fly, but it feels like we're closer than we were like even 6 months ago, I'd say, in terms of that offering and going, well actually we now know that some of those workshop models work. It's now a question of if we treat that as a normal product from a normal company that's making money and is successful and apply that to this, what does that look like? And that's where we're at now, which is much more exciting, I think, in terms of then where the future goes, because it's like, well, suddenly that becomes a more scalable, high-impact product that happens to also take people on that sustainability journey. So it's just about flipping it around to go, we are not a social impact business, because that is a much smaller market than saying we are a business improvement organisation.
We just this is how we do it.
And
that makes sense, and that's your example towards sustainability that we talked about earlier, which essentially you've changed the messaging to make it more digestible, that actually makes sense to everyone, which is huge. I think that's so important. So in terms of competitors, well, I'm not even calling them competitors, other people doing this thing, are there lots of other organisations doing this? Are you the only one?
It's a surprisingly Not a huge amount. There's people who are doing similar things. So there's a lot of like tech startups that have got funding around climate tech to do things like carbon accounting and measuring footprints at scale. But they're typically tech tools only. They don't necessarily have that sort of triangle of stuff that we do with the workshops and the other stuff. And I think what still surprises me is how few people are supporting those smaller organisations. I think there's a lot of consultancies out there who I wouldn't really count as competitors because they're sort of more bespoke and boutique. Because I see our role, as I mentioned, we're not doing the carbon footprints necessarily. We can do that and we have done that. Our main primary purpose is to take people from a non-sustainable, I don't know what this means, into then taking that first step. And in that space, there's very few.
Right, okay.
And the ones that do tend to be technology tools, which works in a certain environment and space, but I don't think it's quite the same as what we're doing.
So for the future moving forward then, how big do you envision this to get? Do you even think like that? Like people always say to me 5-10 years and all that, and I'm like, as long as I'm alive next year I'm happy kind of thing. Like where do you look and how far in advance do you look?
I don't know. I'm sort of still trying to work out what we're actually selling to get through in the next 3 months, which is the challenge, right? Which is why I can empathise with the small business owners. It's an interesting one because if you told me, so this is a bit of a personal journey I sort of went on, in that sense of feeling quite negative about where we're at and going, I don't think Small Little Line's a success because financially it's not successful. I'm taking quite a heavy pay cut compared to what I was doing SEO wise. Is it actually doing anything? Is it having an impact and all that? I then sort of took my Small Little Line hat off and put my SEO hat on and went, I would not have been invited to Manchester to do a podcast recording when I was doing SEO. And there was I would not have been invited to a conference to speak on stage when I was doing SEO, which happened multiple times in sort of January and February. And I was like, okay, is that case of things are going, perhaps things are more established, and that initial aim of growing the business to a point where it was having an impact beyond me has happened in the fact that I'm now speaking in front of small audiences and people, and it's got a bit more momentum there. So I think there is a piece there of looking back to look forward and going, well, actually 2 years ago, if you'd have told me that we're running People Planet Point in Hawaii, Singapore and New Zealand, I would have laughed at you because I was in the pub in Glasgow going, it's just me hosting events and Eventbrite, it's not that hard. Why would it grow? So that's where I'm thinking the new workshops we're developing that could potentially scale and have already scaled a little bit in terms of that early adoption gets me quite excited. So I am very cautiously optimistic that we could start growing it, and I do think that we could start moving in international markets as well to go, well, actually the UK is a little bit ahead perhaps, or is a little bit more mature in terms of the audience, and therefore we can replicate that in other countries. What that looks like, I don't know, and I think I don't want to go too hard on that, but I mean, 5 years is a really long time in this space.
Massive, right?
I think the policy landscape, the climate landscape, I mean, just even thinking of what the weather is going to be like in 5 years' time is going to be so different, and I think people are going to have experienced much more disruption to their businesses through climate impacts than they expect. Already now we're seeing, just because it's a wet year through the El Nino, I think the estimates are it's about a 40% reduction in agricultural yield for this year because they can't plant crops, and we're missing the window because the land is too wet. That's climate change that's starting to bite in very real terms and is going to hit people's pockets. That's going to happen in the next 2 years. I think we're probably 5 years away from that actually being realised that that's what is happening and why that 2030 target is so important. Unfortunately, 5 years from now just put us at 2029. So there's going to be a big reckoning of people realising they need to act very swiftly to decarbonise and address this. Whether we will be the person that then stands there for those small businesses and do it, I'd like to be. Whether that actually becomes a bigger business that moves into this space because they've got more funding or something like that, that's kind of the main concern. But I think we're in a good position to do that, and yeah, I'm excited to see where it could go, and I feel quite confident that we can deliver that scale and transformative impact. But yeah.
How do people find out about Small 99 then? How do they find you on websites or social media? How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so blog posts, normally we come up a lot on Google, unsurprisingly, for a lot of topics, so we get quite a lot of traffic through that. People Planet Point is genuinely really good. It is one of our main channels of just people hear about us through that, and then we take them on a journey. Once they sign up, there's a few emails you'll get that will be a bit more information about stuff. But yeah, the website's the main one as well. And we are starting a podcast as well. So I'm back, just a cheeky shout out on another podcast. But about a few years ago, me and a good friend Simon, based in Brighton, used to do Adam and Simon's Bullshit Busters, which was a really good, fun sort of thing we did. Again, just to kind of cut through the noise of a lot of marketing, where there's a lot of bullshit out there about marketing, so let's cut through that. We're now just launching that again for sustainability, to experiment with that and see if there's what demand there is, because there's so many topics that I'm getting asked and people just want simple answers, so we're trying to kind of relaunch that as well. So yeah, keep an ear out for that.
Oh, there's so much going on. My final question before we get to our quickfire round is more around building a community.
Yes.
So what kind of things do you have to put in place for you right now with 15,000 people, all these countries around the world? That is a community that you've built. How do you do that, and what things are you doing to maintain and support that community?
Yeah, make it simple. I think the reason why People Planet Point has grown so much better than some of the other things we've tried is because it's in person. It's an emotional connection, it's hopeful, and it's easy, and it's sort of fun. It's quite a light-hearted take on it, where People Planet Point, the name came from People Planet Profit, which is like the triple bottom line, and so let's take out profit, pints are more fun. It's a bit more cheeky in that sense, and it's a bit more kind of energizing. I think that's one of the key reasons why it's worked. I think we do. It's a really interesting challenge in terms of that. How do we maintain that community? It's something we've not really answered, because the way we do that at the minute is by just hosting more events and just getting people along to those events. It's really difficult to provide a network for them that people actually want. We've tried online tools, we've tried like LinkedIn groups, we've tried all that stuff. No one gives a shit, because they just want to go to a pub and talk to someone, and like a physical person. So we see WhatsApp is the closest we've got to doing that, but even that doesn't really work. It doesn't. You know, you need active people in that area to maintain it.
Yeah.
So I think with our host network, it's making sure they're okay and that they're supported with the tools. And we do spend a lot of money on, or a lot of money is probably not the right word, but a lot of time and investment into making sure the technology is easy to use, into making sure that all the assets are there and that everything's very simple and accessible for people if they need more support. But yeah, that's a very long way of not answering the question.
Well, you've essentially said that you provide the space.
Yeah.
So you provide the space and all of that support behind the scenes for that space to happen. The magic happens in that space.
Yeah.
And then after that is just letting people know when more spaces are coming up so they can come to those spaces.
Yeah, I think if I was to summarise it, really, it is make other people look good. We are there to make our hosts look great in their local community, and if we achieve that, everything else falls into place.
Is there nothing on the other side of it where someone has a great idea or a chat and it comes up something, let's do something together? Because I assume that's the aim of the reason you want people to come together, is to come up with ideas, to create things that are then possibly implemented. Does Small 99 or any support on that side look at any of the conversation topics that come out throughout the session, or how you may be able to support in that direction? Or is it literally like you guys came up with it, go and do whatever you want to do?
Yeah, it's really hard to track that, because in order to do that, we need to be tracking every conversation that happens at 60 events every month, or trying to provide a way to capture that. We've tried a few things like with surveys and going, actually, what impact this had, none of which has worked, because people don't want to respond to yet another survey. And I think that there is a serendipity piece there of just going, you don't know who you're going to meet at that event. Yeah. That might mean that it leads to the local council finally hearing from a small business owner that they can't put solar panels on the roof because of grid capacity connections, and they're being charged by the national grid to connect their solar panels up. It's not anything else. And we've had things like that where people have realised they just wouldn't have normally met those people, and it's kind of broken down a bit of a boundary to go, actually, what does that look like? Right. But yeah, I don't really know. So if anyone's got any ideas out there for that, please do let me know.
Please, come on.
Yeah.
We're basically asking for help on this podcast more than we're actually giving any support. I love it. So, first of all, before we jump into the quickfire, I just want to say thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story. Not everyone has the courage or to be able to say that, actually, look, I don't know. That's a really important and powerful thing to say, is we don't have all the answers, and the space that you're in is it's actually really nice to say that actually you don't know, I don't know, and maybe we need more leaders, political leaders, to say, I don't know. Like, we're going to go down a route we don't know. This is the reason we're going behind it, and this is the reason we're going for it. And together we can hopefully find solutions. So thank you for sharing your story, mate. And
thank you.
Being amazingly you as well. I love that.
Well, thank you. No, it's been really fun, and I think that is a really powerful message. I think because it's the biggest reassurance point in workshops I see is that when people are asking me questions and I say I don't know about that, it's really interesting to see the relief on their face in that there's not this entire world out there that they don't know about, and they're like, oh, okay, so we're just going to have to make it up and work out things. And I was like, yeah, we're all going to have to do that. And it's a really powerful thing and reassuring for them to do that. So yeah, it's a good reflection, I think, on this.
No, absolutely. So just got that out of the way because the quick fire questions, you're going to probably hate me afterwards. So I thought you get the kind bits out. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to start a sentence, you're going to finish it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to answer why you've said that answer, just quick fire, onto the next one.
Brilliant.
Okay, so life is about?
People.
Communities should?
Talk to each other more.
The environment is?
Under threat.
Small businesses should?
I think talk to each other more.
I should do more of?
Talking to small businesses.
I should do less of?
Thinking you don't have any power.
If there was one government rule that was to be implemented, what would that rule be?
Carbon tax.
A carbon tax. Oh, I love that. So good. Education can be better at?
Inspiring.
How much of where you're at right now is due to hard work, and how much of it is due to just luck?
I think it's making the luck through hard work. I think it's definitely both of... It's definitely luck and knowing who I'm speaking to, but I think a lot of that has come from spending the time and the hard work in making sure that I'm talking to everybody and I've got those connections in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
I think it's both.
If you could give advice to your 21-year-old self, what would that advice be?
I'd probably say just keep doing more stuff, keep exposing yourself to new ideas in a way that I was probably quite insular at the time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's really been powerful since gaining more confidence since I was like 27, is probably where I'd say that when I went freelance, that was the big benefit, was just that exposure to different worlds and different markets. And I think I'm still a little bit bad at that, but yeah, I think just that not being afraid to have those conversations with random people.
I think there's something really special. There's a theory out there that talks about essentially new encounters spark new synapses between the brain waves, and essentially the more that you have new encounters, the more it sparks new learnings and opportunities.
Yeah.
And it's just putting yourself into those environments to be. Some people do the same thing every day for their whole life.
Yeah.
And that's just their routine, but you're not sparking those new opportunities. I think as an entrepreneur, and what we do is essentially the new encounters with different people every single day.
I think that really links back to what we were saying about the luck or hard work thing. Is it's about putting the hard work in to create that opportunity of the serendipity. The kind of, there's a phrase that someone used, is Lisa from Glasgow Chamber of Commerce, where it was this idea of creative collisions, which really stuck with me. If that's where co-working spaces like this one are so powerful, is you don't know who you're going to meet on that day, and you need to put the hard work in to make the luck happen through those creative collisions in the right space at the right time.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, Adam, we have asked 147 people 2 questions on the Tales to Inspire podcast, and we end every podcast like this. So I'm going to ask you the same 2 questions, if that's all right. Yeah. So, Adam Bastock, what is your definition of the word inspire?
I think making people realise how they can have a better life. I think that's how I define it. And I think there are different ways that you could, I'm just basically verbally out loud sense checking my own answer there. But I think it is, that might mean it needs to be education, contrary to what I said earlier. I think that sometimes might mean that it needs to be meeting new people and having different experiences. But I think inspiration always has to be that you can see something in your future that you then want to drive towards.
I love that. And the final question, Adam, that we've asked every Tales to Inspire ambassador is, if you were to live your best life, your greatest life, you got into your 90s, your 100s, you've really done everything that you wanted to do during that lifetime, What's the biggest impact you want to have achieved during your life?
I think decarbonise small businesses. I think at a local level, and be able to look at a map of the UK and go, I've had an impact on these communities by reducing their emissions and therefore building a more resilient. And that might not necessarily just be emissions reduction, but it's also about resilience to climate change, and go through the work we've done, we have saved people sort of harm and negativity from climate change and what is coming.
I love that. It's reminded me of one of our ambassadors, Bruce Crowther. He started the Fair Trades Towns movement, and very similar answer to his there. That it's like that movement and really being part of that, but to impact communities at a local level. So, Adam, thank you so much for being on the Tales to Inspire podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thank you for watching today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please leave a comment in the comment section below, and we cannot wait to see you for our next episode.